a part of it, that maybe I'd been in an accident or something. Many hours had to pass before I really understood fully what had happened, and days passed before I knew about the truck and the head-on collision.
Well, you had 11 hours in surgery, you had massive injuries.
I did.
And though you came to in incredible pain, the surgeon told you there was good news as well.
Oh, it was miraculous news, and it really baffled and confused the medical people. They knew because of the earlier tests that I had brain damage and that I had internal injuries because of the being impaled on the steering wheel. And so when they did all those subsequent tests at the emergency room, at the Level 1 Trauma Center in Houston, Texas, they discovered early on that the brain damage was not in existence, nor, even though my head had been crushed, nor there were any internal injuries.
I mean, this is incredible. You had been totally crushed. I've seen pictures of your crashed car, and you'd think nobody would get out of that alive, let alone without sustaining brain damage.
Yes.
And those were specifically what Dick had prayed for, weren't they?
He had prayed for that very purpose. He had prayed because he'd been told, he said, well, this man, if he does live, if you pray for him, if he lives, he's going to have brain damage. He's not going to have any meaningful life at all. So Dick didn't just pray for life, he prayed for a meaningful life. He prayed that I wouldn't have any head injuries. And when they did the test, they were incredulous. They couldn't believe, based on everything you just said, that I had a level of intelligence and that I had no internal injuries that compromised my life. Now, realistically, things began to get much worse after that. But I mean, that in itself was a miracle that is not explainable by any medical technology until this very day.
Wow. Well, one of the things I was really impressed by in your story, Don, it wasn't triumphalist in any sense. There were bleak periods. It was very much warts and all.
It was.
And you actually say in your book, I'd experienced heaven, returned to earth, and then suffered the closest thing to hell on earth I ever want to face. But I know that even as you wondered why you'd come back, you realised just how many miracles had gone into you surviving at all. What were they? If you play the what-if game, on the one hand you could have said, what if I hadn't taken that turning?
Right.
I wouldn't have been run over by a truck. But you could look at the other way and think, well, what if I hadn't put my seatbelt on, for instance? What were the things that led to you surviving at all?
Well, you pointed it out very well. I actually made a conscious decision at the gates of the conference center that day to take a different route home, just out of curiosity. I hadn't been that way before, and I'm kind of curious by nature. It just tells you how important our decisions can be. Well, I took a different route. There was a truck waiting for me down on that way, and I was...
And you'd never been that route before?
Never had been that way before, and had traveled home from that place on several occasions, always by the same route. This was a conscious decision. I placed the seatbelt on that day, and I had not been formally aware of seatbelts. I thought they were uncomfortable. I placed it on because just 3 weeks before the accident, I actually received a citation for not wearing a seatbelt. And so as I left the conference center that day, I said to myself, I'm not going to get another ticket for not wearing a seatbelt. So I just consciously strapped it on. 10 minutes later, a big truck hit me head on. The only reason I was wearing it is because I still had that citation lying on the front seat of my car to be paid when I returned.
So there was a sense of things being planned for your survival even weeks before with you getting that original ticket.
It really was. And, you know, retrospect is a great teacher. I mean, how could anyone have known? No, a lot of things had to happen. Just so. I mean, they had to happen perfectly, from that seat belt to the Dick's prayers.
Orthopedic surgeon.
My orthopedic
was
surgeon
an expert,
was one of the only, on duty that night in the trauma center, was one of the only surgeons in America who could apply the technology they did to reattach my arm and leg, and has been now my surgeon, the same surgeon, through 34 surgeries. And he was the man on duty, and that was just his night.
And of course there was an absolute explosion in prayer for your situation. Tell me about that.
When the church was notified that I had been